So just a quick programming note before we move on to our next segments. I will be appearing on Cannabis Coast to Coast News as an Illinois correspondent.
That'll do it for the B block, or second section of Cannabis Coast to Coast News. But when we come back, we will introduce you to our newest member of the team. His name is Cole Preston, and his website is thecolememo.com. He is a pro-cannabis advocate in his home state of Illinois. And next, you'll meet Cole Preston as Cannabis Coast to Coast News continues after this.
2025, the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. And with that, here is the full segment I submitted for this week's broadcast.
Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is the C block, or final section of this week's roundup of cannabis news here in the United States. Many advocates are familiar with the Cole Memo that was published under President Obama in 2013. At that time, the memo was written by Deputy Attorney General James M. Cole. It protected legal adult use states from federal interference. Then, during President Trump's first term, his Attorney General Jeff Sessions rescinded that memo in January of 2018. Merrick Garland, who succeeded Sessions as the Attorney General under President Biden in 2021, mostly reinstated it through his own comments when he was in Senate Judiciary hearings before he took over his responsibilities. So now you know the history. Meet Cole Preston, our new Illinois correspondent, who is an advocate and the host of a podcast and website called The Cole Memo. We welcome him to the team, and this is his first Illinois Cannabis Report.
I'm Cole Preston with The Cole Memo with this week's Illinois Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This week's story is focused on the release of the annual Cannabis Report for the year of 2025. The Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, which decriminalized the use, sale, and possession of small amounts of cannabis from a small number of licensees, requires the release of an annual cannabis report from the various state agencies that oversee the regulation of cannabis within the state of Illinois. During 2025, Illinois issued 93 dispensary licenses, more than any year so far. The Criminal Justice section of the 2025 Adult Use Cannabis Health Advisory Committee includes data on cannabis enforcement and incarceration outcomes. According to the report, 57.5% of those incarcerated for cannabis were Black or African American, and that compares with just 28.7% who were white, which is insane when you remind yourself that both races use the product at exactly the same rate. The data shows that cannabis enforcement in Illinois remains geographically and racially concentrated, particularly in Chicago communities that lack dispensaries. And it just so happens that these are the same communities that have always been impacted by the war on drugs. Not much has changed since legalization, and this is a trend that has been reported on by the Chicago Tribune in the past. Unfortunately, in 2024, cannabis arrests in the state of Illinois increased to 4,058, which was the first year-over-year increase since the state decriminalized in 2016 and legalized in 2020. Now, I just wisped the surface in this report. I encourage you to read the full reports now at cannabis.illinois.gov or at my website, thecolememo.com. That'll do it for this week's Illinois Cannabis Report. I'm Cole Preston from the Cole Memo, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
2020.
All right, folks, that was my first segment on Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Definitely check them out. I believe you can find them by looking up Pro Cannabis Media, and I think it's going to be a challenge for me. You guys know I like to do longer segments, but the time commitment I'll be working with this is 2 minutes, roughly 2 minutes per segment. So, hey, if you want a little bit of a shorter fix of Cole and a look at the cannabis news from coast to coast, check out Cannabis Coast to Coast News. They've got correspondents from each and every state, and it's definitely interesting. So check it out if you're looking to learn more. I do my best to cover as much as I can, but I'm not from I can't be everywhere all the time. And so it's really nice to see what Jimmy has done and bringing all of these cannabis correspondents from across the country together to do a show like that. So, I don't know that I'll be on there every week. I'll be on there as much as I can come up with a report, which is, if you watch this show, I've got plenty of content that I release, but you also know that sometimes there are dry spells. So PCM has correspondents from all over the world now. So definitely check out Pro Cannabis Media, Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Try to put some links in I will have a link definitely to that episode in the show notes. So check that out after the fact, wherever you're listening from, I guess, except for twitter.com. There should be a link that you can click on that takes you to the full show notes. And I try to put all of the links for everything I talk about in the show, which takes some time, but I do that because I want and encourage all of you to do your own research. I've got my opinions sometimes, but I want you to come to your own conclusions. It's important. Some cat on the internet says CCCN is great. Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Been following them too. You're a great fit. Lots of young people over there. Hell yeah. So shout out to Jimmy Young and shout out to Mark the Clone Guy, who actually happens to be tuning in tonight. Mark, feel free to drop a comment and plug anything if you want to. I'll throw it on screen and give you a little shout out. I do appreciate you hooking me up and giving me that connection. So we're going to keep things rolling with a short story, and then I'll have some articles to share and some pre-recorded segments to close out the show. Folks, I hope you're finding value in this episode of
The Cole Memo.
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 The Cole Memorandums.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
This drug is dangerous. You cannot play with it. It's not funny. It's not something to laugh about. Good people don't smoke marijuana.